Hi everyone, this is Fionapollo, and oh my days, I am both freaking out but also absolutely buzzing about the situation that has happened with a bunch of Disney Channel animated properties. Some way, somehow, someone has been able to grab a whole bunch of materials from the Disney Vault, including pitch bibles and pilot videos and more for multiple animated shows and films made or were potentially being made between the late 2000s and the late 2010s. The Vault has been essentially cracked open, and all of these items are being released to the public online and uploaded to the Internet Archive. There is a playlist of all the previously unreleased pilot episodes, which has now unfortunately been removed, but thankfully they were added to the archive before that happened, so now they're just out there, and I'm not even gonna lie, I am happy that these things are finally being shared instead of being locked away, and I just really felt the need to discuss this in the wake of recent concerns regarding media preservation, lost media, and other such similar topics that I've covered in the past few weeks. In previous videos to do with things like lost media and media preservation, there's been a bit of a sour vibe towards corporations at the moment, because there are so many fantastic ideas that just aren't being picked up, or they're being shelved halfway through, or they're practically complete, such as with Coyote vs. Acme over at Warner Brothers, and the film is being written off for tax purposes, and then being hidden away where even the people who worked on them aren't being allowed a copy, so these people are just being more or less denied the fruits of their labour that often span multiple years worth of work. Now, obviously, these are being leaked, so it's not Disney's decision to actually share these materials, and I am praying for the poor sod who was able to pull this off to not get sniped. But I do want to say that the amount of positive reception to them, the pitch bibles and pilot episodes especially, should not be discounted. Both fans and artists are overjoyed to look at these projects with fresh eyes and assess how some of their favourite series like Tangled, Gravity Falls, American Dragon, and so many more were conceptualized and refined before going on the air. It's a learning experience to see these things. I'm honestly of the mind that these leaks are exactly what people needed to see right now in the midst of so much uncertainty within mainstream animation, both as a job field and as we are seeing the rise of more independently produced animation, and I want to discuss all of that right here and now. So, if you like what you're hearing, then please consider liking and subscribing. I cover a bunch of topics relating to animation, internet culture, fandoms, and all that jazz. YouTube isn't my main job, but it does help with a couple of odd bills, so please consider subscribing for more if you're interested. Has one of your favourite Disney Channel shows been affected by these leaks? What do you think of it? Do you think it will have a positive or negative impact on anything regarding the industry? Please let me know, and without further ado, let's get into it. So what on earth has happened? What is everyone so up in arms about? The first instance that I saw of this was via Lost Media Busters on Twitter stating the following. Breaking! Over 100 plus Walt Disney Company promotional materials, press kits, credits, etc. have leaked for films varying from animated to live action from the late 90s to early 2010s. This seemed like this was the beginning of the dam being broken, and before I knew it, on the 26th, my feed was suddenly flooded with an influx of not just posts from this account stating that a variety of animated pilots for various Disney Channel properties had been released, but multiple other people alerting the entire internet to a YouTube playlist containing them. In total, I think about 20 different combined pilots and show bibles have now been released to the public. These include pilots for Wander Over Yonder, The Ghost of Molly McGee, Amphibia, formerly known as Amphibiland, and Big City Greens. And it's not just people interested in posting about lost media, but many animators who worked in the industry, students, appreciators, fans, and researchers also began sharing these posts around and giving their thoughts on this. And as far as I can see, there is not a single person who is unhappy about this incident. The subject of shelved productions and what happens with a series pilot has been a point of contention for quite some time among animators and fans, and over the years, as more information regarding how certain productions and crews are treated, it's unsurprising to see that people are happy that someone said fuck the system and went rogue. It's pretty common for big corporations to squirrel away any scraps of intellectual property that they feel either cannot be profited on from them, or has the potential to be profited from by other people. As a result, if a project is deemed unsuccessful or shelved for whatever reason, to avoid anyone else taking any of the concepts and using them for their own purposes or promotion or anything like that, these companies instead lock them away in their respective media vaults. And as you can imagine, this is particularly frustrating to the people who worked on these projects, who often don't receive a copy of their own works, not necessarily to go off and make their own show with it or to profit from it or anything like that, but even to just use it in a portfolio so that they can get another job when it's done. It's difficult to showcase the full scope of the types of projects you've worked on if certain ones are completely inaccessible and therefore your work on them can't actually be verified. So on that note, What are the main things that have actually been shared, and what purposes do they serve in relation to any given animated series? The main materials that are receiving the most focus at the moment are pitch bibles and the pilot episodes for a handful of shows. For anyone who doesn't know, a pitch bible or a show bible is a reference document used by screenwriters for information on characters, settings, and other elements of a television or film project. A pitch is when the project is presented to potential developers or buyers to have any chance of securing investment for a project. A potential buyer could be an established production studio, for example, that would then develop the project and, in turn, pitch it to investors and distributors. If one such developer, such as Disney Animation, decides, yep, we like this story, we're going to take a gamble on it, the crew then have to make a start on establishing and outlining the key technical aspects of the show, and that's where the show bible comes in. These bibles are invaluable when it comes to animation projects because they help contain information on how to go about certain compositions, animation quirks, and things that give the show its unique set of rules to ensure it feels distinct and consistent with the rules of that show and universe. It's also very helpful for when parts of the animation are outsourced to animators overseas so that they know what they need to keep in mind. For example, if we look at the reboot series of Powerpuff Girls, Dean Heason, one of the crew members, made a post on Tumblr showing some examples and stated the following. Back in March 2016, I was brought onto season 2 of PPG. When I started, I was given the task to create a new design bible for our beloved little girls, remolding their designs, creating libraries of poses, and troubleshooting their design language by figuring out the do's and don'ts for our animators overseas. It was very intimidating to tackle such iconic characters, but I was thrilled and had a lot of fun doing it. So as such, they are incredibly important to the consistency of a show's production. Helps keeps things organized, coordinated, avoids deviation and errors, yada yada yada. There are of course exceptions, but this is more so the case for older shows that had wackier animation or had a slightly different production pipeline. Pilot episodes, by extension, also work in a very similar vein. Pilots are often considered a part of a series' proof of concept, to see how everything works on the actual screen and to convince the company or network funding it to take a chance on the full series. As a result, while there are some out there which are fully realised, which coincidentally also happen to be the ones that do eventually get released to the public, pilots are often shorter, unfinished, or have deviated designs compared to what is shown in the finalised series if greenlit. And while pilots are often released sparingly by companies and studios, when they are put out into the world, it's usually done for educational or behind-the-scenes purposes, and not necessarily to try and generate any further monetary intrigue, which is usually what executives, for example, tend to focus on, and the reason a lot of them get locked away. Pilots can also have a lot of lore-based tidbits, design changes, and scrapped plot elements that aren't considered canon to the final draft of the series, and so I think they usually also keep them under wraps to avoid assumptions being made by viewers and fans about what is actually happening in the main show. For example, in the Owl House pilot, Amity was originally an exchange student who came to the human world, and Luz discovered the portal to the Boiling Isle when trying to return her passport. While this very clearly got changed in the main show, some pilot episodes do get treated as the first true episode of the series, so it's important to keep this kind of distinction in mind as to why some pilots may not be shared. And personally, this tends to be an issue that indie animation runs the risk of coming across as well. It happens a lot with Hazbin Hotel and Hello Boss, for example, where fans will insist that certain details are undeniably canon because they were included in a stream from about 3 years ago, which, no. But I digress. That is the main gist of what has been released, but why is all of this information and media being released so important? Why do we care? So as some of you might know if you've watched some of my other videos, animation is actually still a very new medium. Cinema by and large itself is still an extremely new industry in the grand scheme of things. So when a new practice emerges, what you'll often find is that as it slowly finds its footing and works out any kinks or hang-ups within its development, what can still end up happening is that some things may end up sticking and becoming force of habit, even on a large scale. And what I mean by this in relation to animation specifically is that when it was hitting its stride from about the 1930s onwards and becoming more popular and in demand, the people who had already managed to establish their careers in this field, the OG animation gurus, were more than a bit cagey about their techniques and skills purely because, well, they didn't know how long it was going to be around for and how long they could keep this gig going. If you have a good thing going on, why would you want to jeopardize it by screaming from the rooftops how everyone else should egg in on it and push you out of that cozy little space you just made for yourself? It wasn't as commonplace as it is now to share your tips and tricks around this time because, well, for one, they didn't have the internet, but also because the employment pool was so small, it was much more likely that you were basically training your replacement. We do have to remember that the industry picked up following the 1920s, i.e. the Great Depression era. Even though things like the job market and economy were steadily improving, there was still quite a bit of anxiety floating around, and these studios were tiny. Animators weren't making 10-minute serialized episodes or 90-minute feature films like they are today. They were mostly standalone shorts that were a couple of minutes long and ran before another film to warm up the audience. As such, that often meant the crews were also much smaller as well. This secrecy also made its way into other facets of the industry, namely higher-ups locking away their precious treasure trove of in-house resources and media away from prying eyes who may want to try and suss out the Krabby Patty formula of success. Because of this, many show pilots are often considered lost media by virtue of absolutely no one having access to them, and the only way to find them would be to go rummaging in these vaults, which is how we've ended up with this current situation. This coincidentally might also be the reason why art schools, particularly ones that specialise in animation, tend to be so competitive. It's likely a leftover sentiment of a bygone era. That's my own theory, by the way, I might be completely wrong. There's lots of reasons that these art schools tend to be competitive, but, you know. With that being the case, I fully believe that the reason animation has experienced such a boom in the modern day is because there isn't as much gatekeeping of resources in that regard. And these leaks are exactly what that feels like. A release of vital information that could be extremely helpful for beginners, students, and even those who are professionals or trying to make their own way within the medium outside of traditional means. I think one of the big reasons for this situation happening at all is because people are sick to death of corporations and executives making things more difficult for everyone. If they don't respect the crews, the artists, the distributors, the fans, the viewers, then why should any of those people respect them in turn? As well as that, I think being able to see these pilots as they are, unfinished and rough around the edges, is equally important compared to being able to see the end product, because I'll be honest, animation is riddled with this weird clash of perfectionism and ego. Because animation has made such big strides, the standard of quality in both visuals and storytelling has also shot through the roof, and this can put budding animators under some intense pressure to put out work that is absolutely flawless, because if not, it gets picked apart and compared to supposedly superior works, and more or less stomped on before it can even get a chance to get off the ground. And that's not really a fair experience, especially not when there are so many other aspects of an animation pipeline, not just writing and drawing. Instead, what these pilots show us are other useful skills that can be utilized within a team structure, annotations of how something should enter and exit a shot, how to communicate certain things through the animation itself. A lot of these early creations are very much a spitballing session that allows other people to chime in and improve upon a solid foundation. And that's what's so great about actually getting to see them and feel like you're getting a glimpse of that creative process. I think because so many people home in on the whole animation process of actually doing like the keyframes and the background drawings and kind of the key visuals of this kind of thing, they forget that there are people who are working on the more technical aspects in order for those things to come together seamlessly. Sure, the end product is nice on its own, but we all love a good journey as well. There is so much uncertainty and an overall low morale in mainstream animation lately that is very much due to bigger factors than any individual person's capability to actually do the job. And it's hard not to let yourself be convinced that's actually the sole reason when it isn't. So I think being able to see these pilots can be a big relief for some who think they're not doing good enough. You absolutely are. Things are just ridiculous at the moment and it's out of the average person's control, hence why so many are just going fuck this noise and turning to indie, which again can hugely benefit from these leaks but can also experience the same pitfalls as mainstream animation. Even outside of how it benefits the animators, aside from maybe the guy who might lose his job over it, or if he isn't found, they'll likely pin the blame on someone else, which isn't great, I'm pretty damn ecstatic to see how happy these leaks have made people. Those who have a special interest in Wander Over Yonder, for example, or whose favourite Disney princess is Rapunzel from Tangled, and who wanted to just understand more of the process behind these properties. I don't know, man. This just feels like the first bit of news in months that has come out to do with animation that isn't just about people losing their jobs or how certain series and shows are getting used for tax write-offs. Like, yeah, the leaks are illegal, but it's just refreshing to see people enjoying something, which is honestly all this video really boils down to. I'm just happy to see people happy. You get what I'm saying? Unfortunately, as of writing this, a hefty chunk of the posts and things sharing the information regarding these leaks have been taken down, and Disney has issued several cease and desist notices to several accounts, particularly those that pertain to lost media, which was expected, but even still, that leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth if I'm going to be honest with you. However, with that said, these items are still available via other means, such as Google Drive folders being shared around if you know where to look. Now that the information has been put out there, it is guaranteed to have been copied and saved by at least a dozen people, who are more than likely going to keep trying to put them out to the public in some shape or form. In conclusion, I'll be completely honest and say that as someone who has become pretty radicalized lately towards making sure media is not only available but consistently accessible, if you can, get these things onto a hard drive and keep hold of them, if not for anything else then just to archive them for future use. Study these pilots, pitch bibles, press kits, and everything else that was made available. Learn from them and enjoy them as they were meant to be enjoyed by viewers and creatives alike. It's so rare for things like these to be given to the public by virtue of so many factors, including copyright, obviously, but also through things like outdated industry practices. If you actually offered the opportunity for people to view these things, even through a paywall or something, people would probably pay for it. I don't know, after everything that's been happening in the industry, so many people have been pretty demoralized, and this is the first bit of news that has really made people perk up and get excited about animation again. Not just because it's sticking it to the rat, but because it's a learning opportunity, as well as a way of seeing more from the shows we both grew up with and that we have come to love in recent years as well. I just want people to enjoy what this industry and medium as a whole has to offer, even if this incident may not be the most conventional or legal way to do it. Anyway, I think that's enough waffling from me, folks. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. If you like this video, then please consider liking and subscribing, as I'll now be using a good chunk of my YouTube revenue to secure funding for my current indie animation endeavours. On that note, production on Mint & Friends is going well. In fact, the casting call submissions for all voice actors actually wrapped up earlier this week. I'm doing my best to go through all of the auditions and assess them as fairly as possible to find our perfect picks, and we'll be hopefully ready to announce the voices of our colourful cast by the 10th of May. I've never done a project where I've employed VAs before, so this has been a really exciting and kind of nerve-wracking learning experience. Also, in addition to that, I have something exciting to share with you all if you've been keeping up with my indie animation highlight shorts, so be sure to watch this space if you're interested. As always, stay safe everyone, and I will speak to you very soon. Bye!